Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X on this 9th of September 2025. And hope everyone has themselves a wonderful day today. A gorgeous day over here in Cincinnati in the 70s. Supposed to come up in a supposed Indian summer as the week goes through. Excuse me. Temperature is supposed to be going to the mid 80s, but the fall weather is finally here. Cooler weather. Had the chance to enjoy it last night, and it was very nice to enjoy it. Put your mind at ease, sink the brain, clear the brain of all the stress that's going on. Now I am here and I'm ready to roll. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful day today. Lots to get to, especially a historical night and a rematch of a dark cloud that just hovered over two fighters, which I'll get onto at the end of the show. But as usual, this time of year, I include the NFL content. So I'm going to touch on what took place last night because I got a chance to witness it when I was out. And it was basically something of two different ball games. And a lot of questions have to be answered. We'll start with this. It's the Minnesota Vikings overcoming the 17-6 deficit and the pick six by J.J. McCarthy when he threw it to Nahshon Wright. It looked like Chicago was going to walk away with the win. But per usual, Caleb Williams collapses and J.J. McCarthy takes over the fourth quarter and scores 3 touchdowns, 2 running, 1 receiving. First ever to do that in the fourth quarter of an NFL debut, and Minnesota comes back. Everyone has their opinions on J.J. McCarthy. I get it. But one thing the guy is, he's a freaking competitor. He was the same way at Michigan. Showed it again last night. That's why they was able to get the win. And that's why they were able to come back. Grant, the Bears didn't help their own cause because of questionable play calling. And Caleb Williams disappearing in the third and fourth quarters as he always does. The story of him last season and at USC. And is going to continue in the pros. I'll touch on him here in a minute. But the competitor that J.J. McCarthy is, this is why Minnesota made the investment to draft this guy at the pick. He was drafted overall, and they basically invested in it. He plays like this. Minnesota's going to go to the playoffs because they have a loaded roster around him. I mean, you talk about in the trenches, Minnesota did it. Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Jonathan on offense, of course on defense, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. And for a minute, looked like Chicago was going to go win this game after the pick six, but Chicago collapsed. Minnesota took advantage of it, and this is going to bode well for the confidence of both Minnesota and J.J. McCarthy. Now, let me remind you, they didn't have Jordan Addison, was sitting out for the 3-game suspension. Jefferson with a touchdown catch, and we know Justin Jefferson's probably number 1 or number 2 in the wide receivers among the NFL, right there behind Jamar Chase. But it was certainly a well-played fourth quarter by J.J. McCarthy. What a way to bounce back after that terrible pick six, where he just basically just gift-wrapped it to Nahshon Wright, and Wright just took it to the house. Looked like Chicago had that game under control, but what happened the rest of the way is a whole different story. That's why I said about the Buffalo game the other night. Same thing here. That's why you play the games until the clock runs zero. Chicago didn't. Minnesota did. That's why Minnesota came back and won the game. Took full control of the fourth quarter. Caleb Williams just became smaller than a snail as the game was going on, and the stats bared it out. 9 of 10 in the first half, 9 for 23 in the second half. Completion percentage was down. Yards per play were down. And not a way to start out the debut of Chicago head coach Ben Johnson, the former O coordinator of Detroit. Bad taste in his mouth going to be going into this week, rightfully and understandably so. And so it's going to be a long week for Chicago. But Minnesota, big road win, a big road division win, I should add, because it was impressive to go into the backyard of Chicago, who I believe was celebrating the 40-year anniversary of the 85 Bears. By the way, shout out to Chicago for the Steve McMichael picture on the Jumbotron over there at Soldier Field. May God rest his soul, just a terrific human being over there. But that's what happened last night. Good big win by Minnesota on the road. You open with a road division win, especially come from behind one the way Minnesota did. You got a leg up on the division, and you're going to be feeling real confident. Minnesota is, especially J.J. McCarthy with the fourth quarter he had. And that's why Minnesota got the win. Now, of course, we talk about how Chicago blew it. It's simple. I mean, Caleb Williams goes small in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's a no-brainer. He completed 81% in the first half, 42% in the second half. Completions off target rate. His off target rate is nearly 40%. You don't want that as a quarterback, especially when we talk about having guys like DJ Moore and Rome Odunze as a receiving duo. And with that, it's just absolutely inexcusable. It took 2 sacks in the second half. But in fairness, the Chicago O-line was just absolutely phenomenal throughout this entire game. Give them their just due. The defenses fell apart. They were in control of the whole game. But as I said, J.J. McCarthy is just one of those competitors. If you follow him his time at Michigan, that's what he did. A competitive guy doing whatever it takes to win. Showed it again in the fourth quarter, and that's why they got the win last night. I mean, this is a case of Chicago just handing it to Minnesota on a silver platter, and Minnesota said, "We'll take it," and we're one with it. I mean, the offense was just non-existent in the first half. Second half, especially in the fourth quarter, different story. That's why Minnesota won the game. Now, we talk about something I've said on NFL shows countless times, and I know a lot of Bears fans are going to give me a lot of pushback for it, but it's reiterating again. I know it's too late now, but it's always going to be revisionist history down the line. But last night was Exhibit A as to why the Chicago Bears should have drafted Jayden Daniels over Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams was the it guy. I mean, we go to a premier school like USC and get all the attention like he did. You're going to get all the attention, and that's why you wound up being the number 1 pick. Jayden Daniels wound up going to Washington as the number 2 pick overall behind him. But Jayden Daniels, I said it then, I witnessed it last year when Washington came to Cincinnati for week 3, and I've seen it so far this season. He was more NFL ready than Caleb Williams yesterday, and yesterday's win by Washington over the Giants, and last night's performance in the second half by Caleb Williams against the Vikings is another exhibit of why I've said that all along. Jayden Daniels was more NFL ready than Caleb Williams. The jury's still going to be out on Caleb Williams. Granted, the Chicago situation is still a lot of cleaning up they have to do. I mean, it's a mess. But to be more NFL ready, if you have an NFL ready quarterback, regardless of what it is, you get him. They should have taken Jayden Daniels number 1 overall because he was ready. Think about how he was at LSU when he wound up winning the Heisman, and look at what he's done to Washington. The jury is going to be out on Caleb Williams for a while. People think he'll never get it. I'm not going to go that far because we still have to play the rest of his career. But that's why I thought they should have went ahead and drafted Jayden Daniels. I mean, he was more NFL ready. Williams is more of a project long term. I get it. I mean, he probably is. I don't think he was ready to come out of school. I think he came out a little too early. But we know how that goes in collegiate sports. But Jayden Daniels would have been my pick if I was Ryan Poles, the general manager. But he thought otherwise. Last night was another exhibit. Look at what Jayden Daniels has done over there in Washington, and look what Caleb Williams has done so far in Chicago. The results speak for themselves. I know Washington technically has the better team. I get it. But in terms of quarterback play and quarterback leadership, so far the first year and going into year 2 of their careers, Jayden Daniels has showed it. We're yet to see it out of Caleb Williams. Now, granted, he's going through a new head coach with Ben Johnson, the one-time offensive coordinator for Detroit, who I think eventually is going to try and help him develop because of the offense they had in Detroit. But it's going to be more of a longer-term project than this is the case of what Jayden Daniels was, who was ready right out of the gates, and we saw it last year in Washington. And speaking of that, Washington and Chicago, I've said I'm going to point this out. There was a marquee game last season in Washington between the Bears and the Commanders. It was the quarterback matchup, the whole storyline. Last play of the game, the Tyreek Stevenson, the Chicago safety, I guess I decided to taunt the Washington crowd as Jayden Daniels was getting ready to take the snap. Throws a Hail Mary off of Stevenson's helmet to Noah Brown for the game-winning touchdown as time expired. From that point forward, the Bears' confidence is sort of taking a dip, and the Washington confidence grew. Granted, it was last year. This is a new season. I get it. But something needs to be said about what happened on that particular play last season as the Bears, I believe, lost something like 8 of their last 10 for the rest of the season. I don't know what the particular numbers are. Don't hold me to it. And Washington, of course, took off to go to the NFC title game to lose to Philly. And it seemed like there's still some residue going into this particular game because they had that game under control against Minnesota, couldn't close it out. It's a case of, once again, as I talked about last night with the Baltimore-Buffalo situation, same thing resonates here. Winning versus not losing. You played to win the game, as the great Herm Edwards would say. Chicago didn't. And basically, ever since the Hail Mary game last year against Washington, all the way through now, they haven't been anything remotely close since. Really got a couple wins in there, but that's about it. But once again, another case of a team playing not to lose versus playing to win, because an 11-point lead in today's NFL is basically nothing. The only way an 11-point lead is safe is when the clock goes 0-0-0 in the fourth quarter. That's the only time an 11-point lead is safe. The 11-point lead is not safe in today's NFL, especially when you consider what happened to Baltimore 2 nights ago, losing to Buffalo, with 4 minutes left, up 16. Carbon copy happened last night. And J.J. McCarthy just took over to put the game on his shoulders since he threw the pick 6 in Nahshon Wright and just took over, and that's why Minnesota got the win. Chicago, granted, I think they're going to be better as the season goes on, but they have a lot of work to do, and I mean a lot of it. But this is not the way you want to start a season after you had the game under control for the most part. Got the pick 6 by Nahshon Wright over J.J. McCarthy, but seemed to just mail it in from that point forward. But something also needs to be said about what happened since the Hail Mary last season when Jayden Daniels bounced it off of Tyreek Stevenson's head and into the hands of Noah Brown for the game winner, because they haven't been the same ever since. Those kind of games do add up if you don't think so. Granted, it was last season. It was early in last season. But look at their record since that happened, and look at the performances since that happened. That's all you need to know. And one thing I want to make mention to, because this goes to you guys in Northeastern Ohio. Apparently, everyone in Cleveland has their panties all up in the bunch because this Sunday is the Cleveland Browns visiting the Baltimore Ravens, the 30-year anniversary of the inauguration of the Baltimore Ravens from the move to Cleveland. And we have everyone in the Cleveland community, especially the biggest coward of them all, Mary Kay Cabot, who wanted to show her heartless ways and write an article unnecessarily about what's going to take place over there in Baltimore on that particular day. Does it have to happen? Of course it does. It's year number 30. It's the Baltimore Ravens' right to do whatever they want. Do you guys have a problem with it? Shut your mouths. Go over there and beat Baltimore Sunday. That's all you got to do. But you're going to be playing a pissed off Baltimore team who knew he'd laid an egg last Sunday night against Buffalo. I'll get to my predictions on that game later on in the week. But you guys in Northeastern Ohio need to flat out shut up. Really, newsflash, shut up. That belongs to you guys today. And some guy calling the Ravens organization scumbags for doing this. The Ravens in the 30-year anniversary can do whatever the frick it is they want. Okay? Did I agree with the move from Cleveland to Baltimore, how it happened? No, I don't. Because I thought the whole thing was a bit of a crux and a bit of a schmuck how the thing was done. I'm with you guys on that part. But doesn't make the Ravens organization scumbags for doing this on the opener against the team, the city they left for? No, it doesn't. Why? Is their right? Is their prerogative? You got a problem with it? Shut up, go over there and win Sunday. That's the only way you can do it. But good luck with that, because you're playing a pissed off Baltimore team who we know laid an egg after having the Buffalo game under control. If anyone's a real, quote, scumbags out of all of this, it's a Cleveland organization and the Cleveland fan base, and the biggest coward of them all, Mary Kay Cabot, who was ignorant and cowardly enough to write a despicable article because she felt the need to trash an organization who basically had the right to do whatever it wants. And if she has a problem with it, she needs to shut her mouth, go over there to Baltimore, and take it up with them personally. Said a lot about why she's one of the bigger cowards in Northeastern Ohio. I'll touch more on that later because everyone in Cleveland all this week has their panties up in a bunch. All you guys in Northeastern Ohio, grow up. It's been 30 years. Let it go. Move on. Can't change history. Do I agree with what happened that day? No, I don't. Is there anything I can do about it? No. Why? It's done. It's over with. And if the Ravens want to celebrate the 30-year anniversary against you guys on their home field, so be it. It's their prerogative. The problem with it, get out. You guys made that bed, shut up, go lie in it. I'll be having more to say about this in the next couple of days because it just flashed around my timeline just now. Ooh. Not that I had a lot of bad ones here in Cincinnati, but now I have a lot of bad ones over there in northeastern Ohio. Shout out Howard Gaddis. I just see you peeping in over here. I hope you're doing well. I'll be seeing you here soon. Speaking of despicable, we know what happened in Philadelphia the other night with the spitting incident between Jalen Carter and Dak Prescott. The NFL, with one of the most bizarre rulings I have, or anyone probably has ever heard, saying because it incident happened before the first play of the game, that's his one-game suspension, and he was fined $57,000, which is basically a game check. Talk about a slap on the wrist. That punishment is a definition of a slap on the wrist. $57,000 is too light of a fine, and a one-game suspension for that, just flat out inexcusable. I know everyone's going to say it has to do with the Chiefs or whatever. No, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. How are you going to explain that rule? And you're basically saying you're going to allow spitting in an NFL game. And we've had a lot of that over the years. Not just the NFL, but also college. Remember last year, the big game, Oregon or I guess Ohio State, Trayshawn Holden spit in the face of a Ohio State defender. I think it was Abuginson. I can't remember his name. So we had that. Of course, 20-some-odd years ago, Bill Romanowski spit in the face of J.J. Stokes on a Monday night football game, nationally televised, which was caught all over the sports news. The NFL basically said, if you spit on someone's face, it's going to basically the equivalent of your one-game suspension, and your fine is going to be soft. That's all they basically said. Congratulations, you just set the tone, and this thing is going to become a mess over the next several years because we might see more of this because you had a chance to basically send a message across the entire league that this was not acceptable, but you didn't. You didn't, and because you didn't, now we're going to have a problem with this. Because something like this should have been a swift suspension. Or I would probably say one game would have been fine with me. But to call the one game against the Dallas Cowboys before the play is absolutely mind-boggling. And for you to basically say only fine that guy $57,000, notice I said only $57,000, was basically inexcusable. You had a chance to send a message across the league with something of significance. You didn't. And because you didn't, we're going to have problems. And this is going to happen across many times, I'm sure. I mean, I know send some kind of ruling to all 32 teams that this won't be tolerated until you do something of significance. It's going to happen because there was just one of the most crooked letters the NFL put out on the statement when this Jalen Carter suspension happened, and it was crooked. I mean, it was out there. A lot of the respected pundits in the NFL community posted it. I won't read it word for word because I don't have it in front of me, but it was crooked and it was pretty foul. I mean, that's what how pathetically cowards this whole thing was. I mean, we're talking about him. Let's talk about this for a second. It's not the first rodeo with this individual here we're talking about, because remember what he did at the University of Georgia with the reckless driving and how he carried himself in the NFL Combine, being so unprofessional and wanting nothing to do with it, and thought maybe because he was a part of the national title team of the Georgia Bulldogs at the time, he was going to be drafted very high. That's why his stock plummeted, and that's why he wound up in the position he was in. I mean right in the laps of the Eagles. As a player, phenomenal run stopper. I'll give you that. Off the field, he's everything but, because that's what he is. His true colors came out as a human being, what he did to Dak Prescott. No, I don't want to hear about Dak Prescott spitting at him, because Dak Prescott was spitting on the ground, and Dak Prescott should not have been fined, and that was the right move by the NFL. I'll give him that. Dak Prescott should not have been fined because he spat on the ground, not at Jalen Carter, and the NFL did the right thing by not fining Dak Prescott. But back to Jalen Carter and the NFL. You had a chance to send a real message. You didn't. You set this tone, and don't be surprised if you see more of this. Because when you basically, I would say slap on the wrist, when you love poked Jalen Carter on the wrist with this kind of a punishment, because this was softer. Not even Sharma tissue was softer than this punishment. When you had this kind of a punishment and basically saying that's all you're going to get, people are going to treat it as okay. We'll just do it. It'll just cost us pocket change. Because $50,000 to these guys is equivalent of taking a quarter and getting a gumball out of the gumball machine. That's what the punishment was for this, and it was quite pretty bad. What a way to embarrass yourself again in National Football League. I mean, Jalen Carter is a phenomenal player. I can't lie. I mean, one of the premier run stoppers in the entire league. On the field, he's as good as anyone. Outside of that, he's anything but. I mean, look up his track record from his time at Georgia and how he handled himself at the NFL Combine leading up to it. That's all you need to know. I wouldn't be surprised if I have to talk about many more of these incidents, and that we're going to find out just what the NFL is really made of, because they just lost their spine when they made the statement they did about this and handed out the soft punishment that it was, because this was softer than Sharma tissue, only $50,000, and the 1-game suspension is basically credited for what happened between him and Dak Prescott. Odd, but it's the NFL for you. The last side note before I venture into the world of boxing: Pittsburgh Steelers adding Jabril Peppers. Still, I think has enough left in the tank to be a contributor. Depth to this Steelers secondary. Of course, Deshaun Elliott, I believe that's the name I'm referring to, out of a couple weeks. But depth in the secondary for a Pittsburgh team that's going all in this season, apparently. And we know how good they looked against the Jets offensively, but defensively, not so much. But a solid signing in a competitive AFC North, where I think the safety depth, when we talk about Pittsburgh and Baltimore, is going to be at a premium, because we're facing a wide receiver core like Cincinnati. You're going to need it, because the Bengals are not going to have one of those games like they had this Sunday at Cleveland, where the offense was just a no-show. Excuse me. They're going to be bouncing back, and you're going to need secondary depth to find a way to at least corral two of those two top receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, in the division. Steelers did the right thing. Add another piece, depth in the secondary. Good kudos to them. I mean, AFC North is going to be much better than people think, because I still think Baltimore's going to win the division, even though we know what happened against Buffalo. But Pittsburgh's going to be coming, and they're going to be coming pretty good. They're going all in for a reason. Don't just quickly write them off. A lot of people did before the season. I gave you guys the warning. Don't write them off until it's time to write them off. They're going to be fine. So that takes care of my NFL segment. Now, coming up this Sunday, live from Tokyo, Japan, the premier fighter south of the heavyweight division, the premier fighter south of the heavyweight division, Inoue-MJ, is going to face none other than MJ Akinmunoli. I just call him MJ. I can pronounce his full name correctly. I do apologize. Yeah, Murtajan Akhmadaliev in a super fight in Inoue's backyard of Tokyo, Japan. Inoue, of course, has been dropped 2 of his last 4 fights, and there's a lot of people going all over crazy about it. But I mean, the guy's going to be as good as he could possibly be. Maybe he's maxed out. Maybe he's going to hit his downturn. I mean, he's got to at some point, especially in those weight classes. Likely it's going to be his last fight at 122 against a very, very formidable opponent in MJ. And he's a very, very formidable opponent. I mean, this is a fight everyone wanted to see for the past year, and they're going to get it. And it's set for this Sunday in Tokyo, Japan. What I'm looking forward to is whether or not whether Inoue is still going to maintain his sharpness, because we've seen him sort of laxed out, especially when you consider he was dropped in 2 of his last 4 fights. Or is he still going to be Inoue and just send another message to those in those lighter weight classes, as he always does? I'll give my prediction on that end of the week. But we know Inoue, probably the best fighter in the world, pound for pound, not named Alexander Usyk. The premier fighter south of the heavyweight division right now, and it's not even close. And I expect him to make a statement this Sunday in his home backyard. And we talk about home country followings all over the sport of boxing, because we've had that over the years. I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez in Mexico, and Salvador Sanchez also. Of course, Manny Pacquiao in the Philippines, Felix Trinidad in Puerto Rico. But there's something extra electric that's going on in Japan when this guy Naoya Inoue steps in between those ropes, and the Tokyo Dome is just packed to the max, and it's something electrical. Every time he steps into the ring, it always magic happens for that country of Japan once he steps into that ring. And I expect that to be the same thing coming up this Sunday against a formidable opponent, because this is the guy everyone wanted to see fight Inoue for the last year to year and a half, and we're finally going to get it this Sunday. Talking about this probably being his last fight at 22. Although I heard he may go up to fight the fake featherweight champion Nick Ball before he goes back down for an all-Japan super fight with Junto Natakani, which I believe will pack the house in Japan even more. But I expect Inoue to be ready this Sunday. It's actually like Sunday night over there, Sunday morning here in the States. And I expect him to do what he usually does. Now, whether the opponent, MJ, can, hold his own, it remains to be seen. Because we've seen Inoue sometimes so far up here to where no matter how good you are, you're over here compared to him. Whether it's still the same, we'll find out this Sunday. And it's going to be a phenomenal fight over there in Japan. Better than people think. I don't think it's going to be the Inoue whitewash like people think, because this guy is formidable. I'll make my prediction at the end of the week. I'll be studying this fight rather closely, because this is going to be a real treat. Whether we get this, or of course, Natakani down the line, remains to be seen. But the focus for Naoya Inoue right now is Murozan Atakamalayev, and that's a fight everyone wants. We're going to get it. Probably the best fight we're going to have in those weight classes, probably for a while. If we get Inoue versus Natakani. And on the subject of Naoya Inoue, this needs to be touched. And there's a lot of you guys in the boxing community who have CTE problems when this is talked about. You guys want this guy to jump weight classes to fight an irrelevant opponent named Tank Davis. What happened to Tank Davis when he fought Lamont Roach? Let's get that out of the way. Tank Davis is history and done for good. Forget it. But the second part is, how do you expect Naoya Inoue to go from 122 to 135? Feeling is he's probably closing in on his max weight, which is probably going to be when he goes up to 26, when he fights the fake featherweight champion Nick Ball, whenever that happens, and then come back down to fight Juno Natakani at 22, which is going to be a super fight. I swear you guys in the fight community have this weird obsession with it's almost like grotesque, psychotic, and sickening when it comes to Naoya Inoue wanting to fight Tank Davis for I don't know what reason. His resume already trumps, and his worst win trumps Tank Davis's best win. That should tell you about the difference between Naoya Inoue and Tank Davis. Naoya Inoue's worst win, find his worst win on his record. It's 10 times Tank Davis's best win. Can you find Tank Davis's best win? First of all, I mean, that's what I'm going to ask. Can you find Tank Davis's best win? And Naoya Inoue's worst win is 10 times better than Tank Davis's best win. That's the difference between the two. Naoya Inoue can do whatever it is he wants, and if you have a problem with it, deal with it. If you don't, get out, because you don't belong. Plain and simple. Now to the historical night that took place 42 years ago at Caesar's Palace. Actually, it involves my home city here. This was the rematch between Aaron Pryor and Alexis Arguello. Everybody in the fight community knows a lot of the backdrop with this. This was a rematch of the controversial first fight that had the infamous black bottle and still had the dark cloud hanging over it for the two fighters. Because everybody knows the story about that one. Give me the bottle, the one I mixed. Everybody knows the quote in the corner of Aaron Pryor. And we know the story about the first fight. The demand took place real quick, but it took longer because governing bodies didn't want to rank Alexis Arguello after the fight. Though he did get a couple wins. And then finally decided to say, okay, we'll rank him. And then the rematch was set for September 9th, 1983 at Caesar's Palace. We know the story about the backlog of the first fight. To explain this perspective, not only was the bottle in the corner, it was not compensated, and also drug testing was not done after the fight, which would have had a lot of questions answered. But everyone's still asking the questions about what happened in that corner going into the 14th round of Pryor-Arguello 1. And that dark cloud was was a spinoff for why we had the rematch that took place about a year and a half later after that. And going into this particular rematch, question was, can Alexis Arguello, the great warrior, the great charm, the great human being that he is, gather himself up for one last great performance, as we talked about with fighters on the decline, against this ferocious fighter from Cincinnati, who was just a buzzsaw, a punching machine and a buzzsaw, the way Aaron Pryor was. Because we know what happened in the first fight. I mean, Aaron Pryor basically just controlled the fight for the most part. Arguello came back. Looked like Pryor was starting to fade. Then give me the bottle. The one I mixed happened. So we go into this rematch 42 years ago today at Caesar's Palace. And basically, Aaron Pryor did wait around. Got off right off the bat. Stunned Alexis Arguello, the perfectly placed right cross that floors him 40 seconds into the fight. But the great champion, the great warrior, the standout Alexis Arguello beats the count. And as Arguello beats the count, now in the second or third rounds, he starts to buckle down a little bit and starts to go at Aaron Pryor a little bit. He hurts Pryor with his own right hand. And as Pryor on the defensive a little bit, pins Pryor against the ropes. But Aaron Pryor, as we know, a high energy fighter, showed it again as the fight was going on. His energy started to take over. And as that was happening, Alexis Arguello started to fade, started to show his age and the wear and tear of the tough fights he had throughout his career. And as a result of all of that, Pryor started to wear him down, got a second knockdown in the middle rounds. And then the combination in round 10 that sent Alexis Arguello down and out, in which Arguello later admitted his body just didn't want to take it anymore, and he basically conceded defeat to Aaron Pryor in the rematch. And Aaron Pryor retains the junior welterweight championship. Story with this one after the fight was both fighters retired for different reasons afterwards. Alexis Arguello, just a true gentleman, a true class act, but just had way too many fights. The mileage just wore out. The tread on the tires just wore thin, as we know. Aaron Pryor's retirement more had to do with his battle with drug dependency, as when well chronicled here in Cincinnati. Came back briefly, won a middle-tier junior welterweight title before he was blasted in 2 rounds by a mediocre punch from a fighter named Bobby Joe Young, in a fight that's still mysterious to this day because the punch didn't look like it had any impact, but it did. But when you talk about what took place on this night in the rematch, this basically was trying to get rid of the dark cloud that took place in the first fight. We know about the story. Give me the bottle, the one I mixed. Because that's what happened 42 years ago at Caesar's Palace in the rematch. Basically a bit more one-sided than the first fight, although Arguello had his moments early. But this was probably a case, again, of Aaron Pryor's high energy and high punch volume was just too much for Alexis Arguello, excuse me. And that was all she wrote, because Alexis Arguello had been in the ring, I think, like 80-some-odd fights, over 500 rounds. It's going to catch up to you, and it did. And Alexis Arguello was one of those perfect fighters of perfection. But when you start to wind down and the perfection is no longer there, the brilliance and the charm and the extra sizzle that he had and was started to fade, you knew the end was coming. And even he knew it. Even he said when he was on the canvas being counted out by the referee, Richard Steele, at round 10, he said his body just gave it and said, it's not worth getting beat up anymore. And basically both fighters retired after the fight. Many, many years later, before Alexis Arguello's questionable death, it was revealed by Aaron Pryor that Arguello invited Pryor to his home country of Nicaragua, and they became best friends after this brutal 2-fight series. And this 2-fight series had everything and then some. I mean, both fighters, you could probably say, were never the same after this. Not just, Alexis Arguello, but Aaron Pryor. I mean, he didn't have a marquee win after this. The only thing he was known for was what happened outside of the ring with him with the drug dependency and the mediocre punch that knocked him out when he fought Bobby Joe Young way back in the mid-'80s. And you could probably make a case, in a sense, for Aaron Pryor that because of his inconsistencies in and out of the ring, especially after the 2 Arguello fights, maybe he can add him to the what might have been fighter list. Because after the 2 Arguello fights, future was in front of him. Of course, part of it is trying to chase a big payday with Sugar Ray Leonard. We know everything about that one. And no, let me shoot this down real quick before I continue. Sugar Ray Leonard did not duck Aaron Pryor. It was the other way around. It was the offer was made to Aaron Pryor twice, and Aaron Pryor ducked it. Of course, in the middle of that, Sugar Ray Leonard had surgery with a detached retina. So the answer is no. Sugar Ray Leonard did not duck Aaron Pryor. So let's get that out of the way. But back to Pryor and Arguello. Here's the thing. I mean, Arguello's going to get to that point anyways because he was trying to be the first fighter at that time to win world titles in 4 weight divisions. Maybe you could argue the weight division a little too high, but fighting the premier junior welterweight at that time, arguably the greatest junior welterweight of all time, and Aaron Pryor, who has a distinction, I would concur with it. Not because I'm a Cincinnati homer, but unanimous consensus. But when you put your body through what these two guys put through, and in the case of Aaron Pryor, in and out of the ring with all the drug battles he had, when you put your body through all of that, it's going to catch up to you. I mean, we're all human beings at the end of the day. All the fighters you see in that ring, they're human beings like everybody else. They're not supernatural. They're not this unique force of nature. They're not, this cartoonish, anime type supernatural thing that you guys see. They're not Superman. They're not any of this. They're human beings. And it was when you go through what these two went through in their 2-fight series, it was going to catch up to them at some point. And basically, it caught up with Arguello as his career was running on, because he had some other fights in the middle where he got beat up on top of it, especially way back when he fought Ruben Oliveras. But that's what happens when you go through the 2 wars. These two did. And these 2 fights were not just any, give and take type fights. It was physical. It was physical both ways. I mean, in the career of Alexis Arguello, I never seen him have to fight so hard the way he did in the 2 fights against Aaron Pryor, having to put extra energy into what he did, because Aaron Pryor was coming, and he was coming hard. But as the way Aaron Pryor was coming hard, he was going to be caught up to him at some point. That's how he lost to Bobby Joe Young when he had some bogus junior welterweight title fight in the middle of that from a punch that seemed less than ordinary. I mean, this was more of a, in my opinion, this is more of a suspect punch than the fainted punch between Ali Liston 2, because the punch looked like it was knocking on the door. Like, you knocked on the door, but somehow Aaron Pryor's on the canvas being counted out. Maybe because of everything that took place in and out of the ring with him, caught up to him. But that was Aaron Pryor. But this 2-fight series, you wanted elite level fighting between 2 elite level fighters at the purest peaks and going for legacy, going for broke, going for everything, putting their bodies on the line. Aaron Pryor, Alexis Arguello. They did it twice. Once in November of 1982 at the Orange Bowl, Miami. And 10 months later at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, which was 42 years ago today. Put it all on the line. Whatever's left of their bodies, they just let it all hang out and gave us 2 terrific, terrific fights. And these 2 guys were simply made for one another. Yes, history's going to say Pryor's 2-0 against Arguello. The official results, you won't dispute that. Great, we know the story about the first one. But these 2 were made for one another. And when they got at it, they had a whale of a clash. And nothing better than when 2 fighters opposite ends like this, one being the charm and graceful champion in Arguello, the all-time great, and the ferocious phenom at the time out of Cincinnati and Aaron Pryor colliding. Polar opposites, different styles. The styles made the fights. These 2 delivered it like none other. We're never going to get anything closer like that ever again, because people are too afraid to put their bodies on the line the way these 2 did. Because one thing I've said this about, when I do Cincinnati sports icons, I mentioned Aaron Pryor. I'll mention my Cincinnati icons here in a second. Aaron Pryor was one that had a chip on his shoulder because people thought he got a gift wrap decision over Thomas Hearns in the amateurs. And while he was coming up the junior welterweight ranks, he felt like he was being disrespected almost a similar way Larry Holmes was. You guys, the fight game in the 80s knew how Larry Holmes felt. Aaron Pryor felt that same way during his time as the junior welterweight champ. I mean, that's how he was. Always had that chip on his shoulder. I said he tried to chase after he wiped out Antonio Cervantes after being dropped in the first round to win the junior welterweight title. I mean, he was trying to get all the names in the big fights. Of course, we mentioned trying to get the fight with Ray Leonard. That never materialized. Again, Sugar Ray Leonard did not duck Aaron Pryor. But Aaron Pryor wanted to be respected in the same fashion the way Larry Holmes wanted to be respected. But because of the era that came in and with all the things around him, it was complex. And it was even harder for Pryor than it was for Holmes because Pryor didn't have anybody. That's why he was chasing the Ray Leonard fight for the longest time. But of course, enter Alexis Arguello, another guy also was looking for a chip on his shoulder, but still managed to win 3 world titles and was a guy who was known for his charm and grace. And in that ring, the guy was an assassin, even it didn't appear like it. Because we talk about sharpshooters in our sport, nobody knew how to sharpshoot like Alexis Arguello. How do you take down a sharpshooter? You basically become like a pit bull and go get the guy. Don't give him a chance. That's what Aaron Pryor did twice. Because these two guys were looking for that moment where they were above everything else for the longest time. But they did dazzle us with 2 excellent moments. We talk about 1982 and the year after in their rematch. Both guys, whatever was left in their bodies in their particular fights, just let it all hang out. And that's what we got with these 2 fights. May God rest the souls of 2 phenomenal all-time greats, Aaron Pryor and Alexis Arguello. I've always touched on Cincinnati legends when I talk about Aaron Pryor because he's certainly on it, and nobody here in Cincinnati wants to acknowledge it. So here's what the Cincinnati icons fit because it's an easy list for me. Some people don't get it, so I'll put this thing to bed. Number 1 is Ezra Charles. That's a no-brainer. I mean, the street, the mural, they're still doing honors. He's still number 1. That's a no-brainer. Oscar Robertson, the basketball player from Cincinnati. You know the story of him. The first ever to a triple-double. Still, I believe, some forsaken here in Cincinnati. Played for the Cincinnati Royals, who are now the Sacramento Kings. But he did win an NBA title with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Milwaukee. Oscar Robertson's a Cincinnati icon. Of course, I mentioned Aaron Pryor. The boxing career speaks for itself. In baseball, Johnny Bench, arguably the greatest catcher in baseball history, although probably more widely recognized. He's a Cincinnati icon. Same with his teammate Joe Morgan, who also played for the Reds. And actually, Johnny Bench countless times who said, we don't go back-to-back in the Big Red Machine without Joe Morgan, because Joe Morgan was a spark and the Energizer Bunny that got us going. You talk about, go to 1990, Barry Larkin, premier shortstop, led the Reds to the World Series as a rookie, won the MVP in 95, has a road named after him, still does wonderful stuff in the Cincinnati community. That's what Barry Larkin is. We go to the NFL. Anthony Munoz. Arguably, again, I'll try to put my Homer hat away for a second without trying to say this the right way. The greatest left tackle in NFL history. I mean, he wasn't a physical specimen, but he was all about football technique. And his football technique was why he was able to protect the blind sides of Ken Anderson and Boomer Esiason for the longest time. And he has a lot of great charity work here in Cincinnati and just a phenomenal human being. He's a Cincinnati icon. A name I mentioned, Ken Anderson, who probably should be the Hall of Fame, but is not for whatever reason. Just like Anthony Munoz, loved here in Cincinnati, phenomenal Cincinnati icon. He certainly was on that list. And another one that touched, actually, this is more recent, a few years back, when Luciano Lucho Acosta of the soccer team FC Cincinnati came here, electrified Cincinnati like none other. I always talk about the passion with soccer and their fans and vice versa. Lucho Acosta, when he was here playing for FC Cincinnati, did that. That's why he's a Cincinnati icon. That's a correct list. That's a correct answers. Nothing else will be accepted. That's how it is. But yes, Aaron Pryor is a Cincinnati icon because when you can win a championship in this city, especially the way Pryor did after coming up from the canvas to obliterate Antonio Cervantes, you did something right in the city. And Aaron Pryor did that. You can't take it away from him. And the 2 fight series he had with Alexis Arguello, epic classics. Talk about putting your bodies on the floor. Let me back up. Talking about putting your bodies on the line, to having every last ounce of energy taken out, just letting it all hang out. That's what these 2 guys did. Both guys fought harder than they ever had to. Both guys brought it harder than they ever had to. And we were treated to 2 terrific classics. May God rest the souls of Aaron Pryor and Alexis Arguello. Phenomenal fighters. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. Tomorrow night, we will remember the Alamo, but for reasons we don't want to remember it, but we have to remember it. I think you guys know where I'm about to go with tomorrow night. Also, another famous night in LA that was also infamous. Everyone take notes, especially in the fight game. I think you guys know what I'm going to be referring to. I'll give you a little preview because we're going to explain real quickly what's a bad decision versus a robbery. I'll break it down even further. And as always, if you missed any part of this show, you can always watch the video versions on the social media platforms and Spotify. You can listen to the audio platforms on the iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in life. If you take care of yourself first, all the good things will come your way. Stay true to yourself and take care of you first. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else in this life matters. Something I had to learn the hard way. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.